Let's go now to Munich, Germany, where Ohio Governor and former Republican candidate for president John Kasich is attending the Munich Security Conference. Governor Kasich, thanks very much for joining us this morning. I want to ask you, the conference there, a lot of world leaders, many others, what are they saying to you about President Trump?
Well, the interesting thing, Jim, is what they're saying is we can hear from the vice president, we can hear from General Mattis, we can hear from General Kelly, but we're not sure about the president. And it is vital that the administration be on the same page. And there is question that in a time of crisis, where will America be? And I think it's just critically important that all the signals coming out of the administration are very solid and very consistent with the fact that we all stand together in the Western Alliance, that we stand strong for NATO. The president's people have all said it, but frankly, he needs to be heard in a more clear, in a more passionate way. Because despite all these people being here, I've been meeting with all these folks from all over the world. They say we're just not sure. So it is really critical that they speak with one voice on all these critical matters of national security and supporting our Western alliance, which has kept the peace since World War II.
Governor Kasich, as you know, one place where President Trump has been clear and passionate is his targeting of one American institution, it seems, after another since taking office. The intelligence community, the judiciary, including individual judges, the Congress. And this week he went once again after the media, but really in stronger terms than he's used, referring to the American media as the enemy of the American people. Senator McCain had some very harsh words for those comments. Have a listen.
If you want to preserve democracy as we know it, you have to have a free and many times adversarial press. And without it, I'm afraid that we would lose so much of our individual liberties over time. That's how dictators get started.
That's how dictators get started. Do you share that concern?
Well, I think Senator McCain, in terms of that, has to defend his own comments or support his own comments. But I think the comments of Angela Merkel, really the gist of what John McCain is saying, and what I have said to the press in Ohio and around the country and here in Munich, is thank God you're there. You're there to hold people accountable. And without a free press, well, we're going to have a free press. And while I don't always agree with the reporting of the press, they're vital. They're really such an important part of democracy. And when I met just recently with press all across the state of Ohio, some that are very critical of me, when I walked into the room, they applauded me. And I got on the stage and I said, I applaud you for following the facts and reporting a story even at times when it is not easy. I have great respect for the press. I was once in the press. The key, though, is not to be over-sensationalizing anything, but get to the facts, let the investigation of the press go where it wants, tell the story. That's a part of America, and it's a part of an institution that works to make sure that things have balance.
You know this was a difficult week for the Trump administration. You have the resignation of General Michael Flynn as National Security Advisor, Senator McCain describing the administration as being in disarray. That's something we're hearing privately as well from many members of the Republican Party. As you look at the administration now in these crucial first weeks, do you see disarray as well?
Well, there's been disarray, but Jim, I'm a little different than a lot of folks. When you're the governor of a state and you're an executive, you assemble your team and then you need to get your sea legs. And I made mistakes early on as governor. In fact, my wife once told me, John, you're the father of Ohio, act like it. And the fact of the matter is that words matter. I think the administration needs to understand that loose words, frankly, causes great concern. And one of the things that's amazed me on this trip over here is as much as the Europeans criticize the United States of America, they love us, they need us, and they tell us that. And in some sense, they're almost begging us to say, please stand with us. You're the leader. No one else can fill your role. So I think it's just very important that in any administration, it gets its sea legs, that it's stable, and realizing that things that get said out of that White House really matter, not just in America, but all over the world.
I am certain that Russia is a major topic of conversation there, also certainly here at home. And two of your former presidential rivals, Senator Lindsey Graham and Senator Rand Paul, they expressed very different views on how Congress should deal with allegations here pertaining to Russia's meddling in the U.S. election. First, let me play what Senator Graham said.
2017 is going to be a year of kicking Russia in Congress.
That's Senator Graham there. Rand Paul suggesting something very different, that Republicans should not investigate the Trump administration's potential links to Russia because it would impede the GOP's policy agenda. Listen to Senator Paul.
I just don't think it's useful to be doing investigation after investigation, particularly of your own party. We'll never even get started with doing the things we need to do, like repealing Obamacare, if we're spending our whole time having Republicans investigate Republicans. I think it makes no sense.
Who do you side with, Governor Kasich? Senator Graham, who says you got to push hard, or Senator Paul says that Republicans should be pulling back?
Let me tell you, Look, if our intelligence community thinks we need to get to the bottom of this, I happen to believe that perhaps a joint House-Senate Intelligence Committee investigation ought to get to the bottom of Russian hacking. Were they trying to influence our election? What is it all about? What's the bottom line? Now, I don't favor at this point moving it outside of the intelligence committees. I think that the intelligence committees have the capability to conduct a thorough understanding of what happened, so that we can be in a position to prevent it in the future. Many European countries are worried about Russia's hacking their elections, disrupting their elections. So I believe that the House and Senate can carry this out, and I think that it has to be done in a bipartisan and thorough way. And I think that a person like Senator Feinstein, Senator Warner, if they feel as though we're not getting to the bottom line and that investigations become partisan, then we have to look at something more independent. But I'm confident that the House and the Senate Intelligence Committee can do this. It's in the best national security interests of the United States, and frankly, the rest of the world is looking at how we handle this because they don't want to be hacked. They don't want to have their elections to be disrupted in any way.
And lots of evidence that Russia's disrupting elections in Europe continue to. Of course, part of the Republican agenda is repealing Obamacare. When you expanded Medicaid in your home state, Ohio, bringing health insurance to an additional 700,000 low-income people, you defended that decision to conservatives by saying this. I'll remind our viewers. I don't know about you, lady, but when I get to the pearly gates, I'm going to have an answer. I'm going to have to answer for what I've done for the poor. Of course, as you know, the Trump administration, Republican leaders in Congress signaled this week they want to sharply reduce federal payments to 31 states. It's going to make it a lot harder to insure the poor that you were referring there in your statement. From your perspective, is it an un-Christian thing for the Trump administration, for Republicans to pursue so aggressively?
Jim, I'm not going to get into, religious discussion, but here's what I will tell you. There are 700,000 Ohioans who now get care who didn't have it before, a third of whom have either mental illness and need to be treated or drug addiction, which is a problem throughout the country. A quarter of them have chronic conditions. They don't even know it. And to turn our back on them makes no sense. Now, I believe there is an ability to reform, to repeal, and replace Obamacare, which also includes a reform of Medicaid that will make the program more affordable, that will put us in a position of where we can continue to cover 20 million people and 700,000 in my state. And I'm not going to sit silent and just allow them to rip that out. In fact, I think the president and a number of other people, senators, said those who are covered will continue to be covered. And there's a way to do it with a reform agenda that I've been clear on, and I'll send it to you if you would like to see it. I understand, now I'm in Munich, but I understand that there was an initial effort by House Republicans to, for example, phase out Medicaid expansion, which means phasing out coverage. That is a very, very bad idea because we cannot turn our back on the most vulnerable. We can give them the coverage, reform the program, save some money, and make sure that we live in a country where people are going to say, at least somebody's looking out for me. It's not a giveaway program. It's one that addresses the basic needs of people in our country. And I happen to believe that's what Americans want.
Governor Kasich, thanks very much for taking the time, and please do send us that plan. We'll be looking for it.
Thank you very much.